Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Today, I have a very special guest, Mr. Ross Weaver, who is running for Midlothian City Council, Place 5. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, DB. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I appreciate you coming on. And like I tell every candidate, thank you for wanting to serve your community because I know that this rough and tumble thing, politics can be, it's not a normal thing to do. So when you want to put yourself up for that punishment to serve your community, that's awesome. So thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. And thank you for what you're doing, bringing information to the public. It's so hard to get good information in the hands of voters on local elections, especially. That what you're doing here with your podcast is definitely making an impact. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your kind words. That's what it's about, information, a place where you could see the candidate without my opinion. You get to see the candidate. So, people may not know who you are. People may know who you are, but, this place is growing like crazy, and we're going to talk about growth. So can you just give them a quick rundown on who you are?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm a third generation resident of Midlothian, graduate of Midlothian High School, proud parent of two kids that are in the Midlothian ISD public education system. I really want to follow in the footsteps of my grandfather, my father, and several other family members that have been engaged and involved in helping Midlothian become what it is today. The quality place that we want to raise our children, and we want our children to be able to raise their children. I like to put it that I want to fight to keep Midlothian a place to call home, not just a place to live.
You know, it that is a good thing because for a minute there it was kind of becoming a little bit of a bedroom community, but we'll get into that one. With this growth and everything. But you said there's generations that have been serving. What qualifications you think make you the suited for this Midlothian City Council?
Absolutely. I've been engaged with the city governance in one form or another for almost 2 decades. I've served on multiple comprehensive plan steering committees. I chaired the Planning and Zoning Commission from 2012 to 2020 when I had to cycle off due to term limits. I've been engaged in several bond steering committees and various other civic functions throughout the community. I'm the son of a real estate developer who's retired now, so I'm very familiar with the real estate entitlement and planning process from both sides of the equation. My formal day job is in title insurance, which is heavily vested in real estate, the laws surrounding that, property rights, and proper ownership and use of property. And that's a large component of what the city council needs to do from a visioning standpoint. I also, being in the title insurance industry, we handle large budgets. On any given month, we may have $100 million or more flow through our escrow accounts at Town Square Title, which we have to account for down to the penny because it's other people's money. And guess what? Taxes are other people's money that need to be accounted for, spent wisely, and accounted for at all times.
Yeah, that is yes, especially the way taxes are hitting people. Just because you do have those type of businesses, are you going to be real careful? Will you have any conflicts of interest?
No, sir, I don't believe I will have any conflicts of interest, especially under the way the codes are written for that. As far as 10% ownership in any kind of entity or, group that's doing a dealing with the city. We have done work for the city of Midlothian in the past on right-of-way acquisition. We currently are no longer doing that because I got back on the Planning and Zoning Commission in 2023. It's very important to me as well as the attorneys for the city of Midlothian that anything like that stay completely above board.
Perfect, perfect. So, what is the proper role of a city council in the lives of the people of Midlothian?
A city council person is, at first and foremost, it's a board of governance, right? Whether it's, in the private sector of the board governing a corporation, in the nonprofit sector, the board of directors who are governing that organization, superintendent and the school board trustees relationship is a board of governance. So, the city council gets to hire 3 employees: the city secretary, the city attorney, and the city manager, and then they're to set the vision for those team members to execute upon on behalf of the citizens of Midlothian. So it should always be viewed with a stewardship in mind. We need to be good stewards of the public trust and the public funds and of the public resources. But ultimately, setting that vision and holding the staff and the other folks who are implementing it accountable to ensure that they are moving the ball down the court towards that vision. I'd like to describe it as a lighthouse, right? It's not necessarily for us to micromanage every nuanced little turn along the way, but we need to put that lighthouse on the horizon so they know where they're supposed to be going.
That answers, because I was going to ask you about accountability. I've asked all the candidates that's been on about that, and you pretty much nailed it. But on top of accountability, one of the big things that citizens love is transparency. When they can, when a council is when their elected official is transparent. So, how important is transparency to you?
I think it's everything in the world of elected officials. And I think the closer that elected body is to my home, the more transparent it tends to be. I know a lot more about what our city council and our county commissioners are doing than I do what our state reps and our national reps are doing on the whole. It's a lot easier to keep your finger on that pulse. And I think that's very important. I mean, from the budgetary standpoint, I mean, the city's budget's out there on the website. It's 500 plus pages, including all the attachments to it. So it's a pretty tough read to get through it. But those resources need to be easily available, easily accessible. Our councilmen and our mayor need to be easily accessible to our residents of the city of Midlothian.
Yeah, and that I think the people appreciate that. And I will say this: I've been covering this for about 4 years on this and another show, and I have been very impressed on how transparent the local politicians in Ellis County have been. I called them up or I text them or something and ask them a question, and they're like, "Hey, this right here," and I love that about this community that they do that. But as we go into taxes and budget, I want to kind of divide the two a little bit. When we do every year, there's the constant post, oh, my tax bill, my property tax is killing me. The city is the second largest part. The school is the biggest part that affects your mortgage, folks. That's why city council and it affects your mortgage, what they decide on there. So what are your thoughts on taxes if you're elected and you're dealing with taxes? Kind of give the audience a feel on how you're going to handle taxes.
Well, I mean, I'm going to be one vote out of 7. So, I would love to say that I can do all of these things by myself, but the power that would be vested in me is 1/7 of that governing authority. But the voice of reason, the voice of fiscal responsibility is very important to me. But it's also very important as a lifelong resident of this community to have quality roads, to have the best police officers we can have, to have the best paramedics that we can have, to have the most robust water system, all of these pieces, which water and sewer are a separate entity, not related to your ad valorem taxes for the most part. But those things cost money, right? If we want to have parks that are nice and well maintained, that's the residents get to kind of set some of that when we have bond elections, right? As far as new large capital expenditures. But I think making the most of what we have and ensuring that our dollars are spent in the most efficient and effective way possible has an inherent calming effect on taxes as much as possible. Part of the tax equation is outside of our control. Part of it is dictated by the state of Texas, and that's up to our state legislators to maybe figure out a way to fix this property tax system and replace it with something better. And part of it's done by the county through the appraisal district, which we really don't have a whole lot of control over. And so that makes it challenging. So we have one thing to control with related to taxes here in the city, and that's the tax rate itself that's applied against the valuation. The council's already taken a great step. They put it in a homestead exemption of 10%. And the plan is that they're going to raise it again, another 10% this year.
Would you vote for that if you were in there?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. But I want to be very clear that while that is a tax reduction for residents on their homestead, it does nothing for our corporate citizens, for our small business owners, for our local investors who maybe own a rent house as part of their retirement portfolio. And I'm not talking about out-of-state owners or things like that. I'm talking about local residents here who have a 76065 mailing address the taxes on those types of things are going to potentially go up, even as the ones come down on our primary residences. And so I want to be very clear, and I think that goes back to transparency. Are we truly, when we do these things, cutting taxes, or are we reallocating the tax burden to other sources? And I think those are two very different things. And
Yes.
for us to cut taxes, it has to start on the spending side, but the spending side comes behind the wants and needs of the residents, right? Because all of those things cost money. So there's a lot of factors in play. And I think it's very disingenuous to just come out and be like, I'm going to cut taxes without having really massaged through that 500-page budget to figure out where we're going to cut expenses without cutting the services that our residents expect.
That's fair. That's honest. But speaking on spending, and you kind of hit this a little bit, and we'll go into the budget. But bonds, there were bonds that were passed years ago that the stuff hasn't been done or hasn't been started, or
Right.
and these bonds just kind of hang around.
Mhm.
Um, what are your thoughts on bonds in general? Issuing bonds, should we try to avoid it? Because our debt service is, I didn't get the number, but it's in the 20s. I think I could be wrong.
Mhm.
But we have a percentage of debt service, and so I wanted your thoughts on the bond, and then we'll move to budgets.
Well, the bonds in some respects are a necessary evil due to the way the state legislature has established the funding mechanisms for political subdivisions like the city of Midlothian.
Mhm.
So I love that they go to the voters, right? And it's a citywide vote, up or down. Do we want to take on this debt? Do we want to build these capital expenditures? And the residents get to ultimately decide on whether they want to spend that money or not. And it's important for everybody when that opportunity comes around, come out and vote your wallet, vote your choice. And if you don't want a new park, if you don't want there to be a new city hall, if you don't want roads to be upgraded, that's fine. Vote no. That's the key component there. So I think that's very important that we continue to keep those bonds in the public forum. My personal preference is that we look at anything debt related the same way that I do in my private and professional life, which is debt that generates some return, whether it's quality of life return that's important to the residents, whether it's financial return in that it promotes business and economics. That becomes an investment, right, in something that is going to provide a thing of value in the future. Debt that doesn't potentially do those things is an expense. It's just an added expense in the budget. And we need to look at that very carefully. Are we spending money on something that is going to have a quantifiable return, either in quality of life or in promoting more sales tax or other things that are going to help offset our property tax in the future?
The way I understand it is city is a service, and they have to provide service. So
Mhm.
that's what makes it a little bit different than mom and pop budget, what you do
Right,
at home. Now the principles are the same. You never want to spend too much.
right.
But there are services that have to be provided. And
Mhm.
then it gets into what service is really needed, and
Agree.
does it apply to, would it be beneficial to the growth of, there's so many things that go into that, and those become political decisions. But
Right.
rolling into the budget, um you if you get elected, you're not going to be part of making too much of this budget, but you would have to be voting on it.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
when you're if you get elected and going forward, next 3 years or whatever, when a budget comes in front of you, what is going to be your one of seven when you vote? What are you going to take in account when you're dealing with the budget every year?
Absolutely. I mean, one good thing about budgets is they generally give you a slice by slice view of what was it last time and what is it this time. And as you go through that line by line and you start to see things that are outpacing the growth rate of our community, if we're growing at 3%, but we've got a budgetary line item that grew 15%, that's one that needs to be flagged. That's one that the city manager or the department heads, whoever is responsible for that portion of the budget, needs to have clear and salient answers as to why are we outpacing the rate of growth in this line item. And it's got to be gone through line by line by line. And you have to have that commitment to sit down and wade through 500 plus pages of information to formulate good questions, to set clear expectations, and demand accountability for anything that is growing beyond, what the growth rate of the community is. Now, we also need to look at it. You said it before yourself. Is it necessary, right? Is this a need? Is this a want? Is this a luxury? The first thing that needs to go are luxury items. The second thing that needs to go are wants. And the thing that we have to make sure get taken care of at all costs are the needs of our community. Do we have good roads to drive on? Do we have good trained and well equipped police officers, firefighter, paramedics? Do we have the quality that we need in our dispatch? Do we have good information technology to support and integrate those? Do we have good building inspectors to ensure what's being constructed in our community is quality and will last? Those things have to be taken care of first. And everything else, okay, if we've got a little bit extra, it's just like in your own personal budget, then let's start looking at the wants that benefit the majority of our citizens here in Midlothian. And if we're getting into luxury items, then we probably need to look at how do we lower the taxes, because we've got too much money. We're just trying to find a way to spend at that point.
And in your opinion, whose money is it?
It's everybody's, the other people's money, right? It's part mine, part yours, and part every other resident of the city of Midlothian, and it should be treated as such.
Yes. Now, with the budget, and one of the things that come up, and I covered budgets last year, and one of the things that popped up with the city of Midlothian is, I think the police went over, the new city hall is over, having to come back, and the often, what I've seen is the city has to come back and say, hey, we're going to need this. Oh, we didn't put that in the budget. And what are your thoughts on that? And how will you hold things accountable when those things come up?
Well, it's unfortunate when that happens. I mean, at that point, it means, generally one of two things. Either somebody missed it on the estimates, which, there was a firm that was paid to generate those numbers, to do those cost estimates. And, hopefully the contract was written in such a way that mitigates some of that. But, the other thing is we've had a very volatile supply chain and building materials, cost environment. On raw lumber in recent years, we've seen wild spikes up and down. And, the same house built in the same year, 3 months apart, may have been $40,000 different on the cost basis on a $400,000 house. And these are companies, I mean, you're talking about the D.R. Hortons of the world, and these guys build, 40,000 plus houses a year nationwide. And if they're blowing their budgets by that much, it kind of, I guess it gives you a little bit of hope that it wasn't just negligence on the front part, and I don't think it was. I think we had a lot of smart people looking at that, and I think we've had a very wild environment in which to try to construct any kind of facility. But it is unfortunate that occurs, and the goal should be to prevent that at all costs. And sometimes that may mean maybe we've got to figure out ways to pull some items out, or shell out part of the building and plan to finish it out later on when we've got cash on hand to do it. It's no different than, you start building your own house and you're looking up and, oh, I'm 50,000 short. Well, you can't just, go to all your neighbors and collect that 50,000. You got to make some tough decisions on, hey, maybe we don't finish out the upstairs yet, and we come back and do that later on. So, my hope is that those conversations are being had right now on the city council level. A lot of those type of conversations may be in executive session or closed door meetings that we as the public are not being privy to.
Well, that's the thing with those buildings and everything. It just so happened that we're building these things, and this inflation we haven't seen in in some in their lifetime. I've seen it. I'm old. but it's hit everybody, and just like it hits the average person, it does hit building supplies. Go to Home Depot and you'll find out when a
Mhm.
fence when some wood fencing went from $40 to 65, it went up. So you're moving on from all that money stuff. Well, I mean, we're still going to talk money. Business, commercial taxes in the city. What can the city do to promote business? Do you support like abatements, and can you speak on bringing the right business to the city?
Well, I don't ever believe in buying business, So if we're saying, hey, we're just going to try to tempt you with some money so you come here, I'm against that. If we are looking at it from a standpoint of saying, hey, we want to partner with you at the beginning, but you have to hit very critical milestones that are going to be held strictly accountable, and that's the key piece right there. Is sometimes in the past, and not recent past, but in the past, there's been some of those metrics and milestones that, business partners were supposed to have employed X number of people or generated X number of sales dollars. And when they didn't hit those goals, then any type of, investment, front end investment the city made needs to be paid back at that point. I mean, that's the way business works. You sign a contract and you stick to that contract. But again, you got to look at it from an expense and an investment scenario. If we're going to try to throw money at something and hope that something good comes out of it, that's an expense. You might as well take it to Vegas and put it on black and let them spin the wheel. If we're going to say, hey, we're going to put this investment down, but it's going to get repaid, through the job creation, the tax growth, the sales tax revenue growth, and as long as you're hitting those milestones where it's, providing more benefit to the city than detriment, um, I think that's a valid, solution in very limited scenarios. I don't want to see it across the board, but I think there are some limited scenarios, especially as we're continuing to try and catalyze, that economic sector growth here in Midlothian. And, activity breeds activity. So getting a little bit more going to help get that additional coming online, I think is huge, but it's important. Are we going to have the high speed data infrastructure to support, corporate headquarters and other high tech businesses that have good jobs and help support our local economy? Are we going to invest in our airport to make it something that executive transport, provides more opportunity for corporate headquarters and facilities like that in the Midlothian area? Are we going to continue to leverage the rail lines from our industrial side to try to generate more skilled trade labor opportunities right here in our community? I mean, I would love a Midlothian where the majority of residents live, work, and play inside Midlothian unless they choose to go outside.
So, as someone who's done business in the city, I mean, what you would know, because you've had to deal with permitting process here in the city. You've had to deal with business in general in this city. What can the city do better to make it easier on local business owners?
I think they do a pretty good job right now. I mean, I would. It's always fun to answer this question when there's something that's really wrong, because that
Mhm.
makes it's low hanging fruit. But I think it's making sure that we're approaching all of our interactions between the city and our local residents and our local business owners from a customer service, customer experience standpoint, right? The goal should not be to throw the rule book at anybody. The goal should be to help them find a path that works within what we see the vision of the city and helps them accomplish their goals. And, especially for our local business owners. I mean, that's such a huge component of the fabric of a place you call home instead of just a place to live. If you want to go up to the Hershey-Eulis Bedford area, you can find tons of businesses that are all owned by people outside of that area because people just live there. And I really do not want to see that in the future of Midlothian, Texas.
So growing into that growth at Walnut Grove, you somehow 650 to $700,000 homes are selling at 7%. That
Mhm.
it's amazing, but they're selling, they're building. And I thought, oh, there's no way that community is like three quarters done. I mean, it's just crazy. They're throwing those houses up on Walnut Grove, and they're not even finished. They still have the other section, the other side, and they're
Mhm.
going to put there's a shopping center that's planned there. So you have a lot of growth, and I was told that we're kind of almost to the point where we're kind of grown out. I could be wrong, but how how could what would you like to see addressed when it comes to since you've done this whole planning thing, you've been part of this, what would you like to see the city do better when it comes to this long-term plan, this strategic plan, or just in general growth?
You know, it's tough when we've experienced the rate of growth that we have. I mean, it is very hard to keep up with the infrastructure and stay out in front of it in that regard. You know, when you think about it from an ad valorem tax standpoint, we talked about this earlier. Let's say a developer develops property in 2021. The houses get built sometime during 2022. Those people move in. Well, they're generally the county doesn't assess them at their fully completed value until 2023. We hope it might be 2024, depending on what they've got going on there and if we're on top of things in that regard. So then that revenue from those additional properties comes in and then it tries to get reinvested back to catch up on the infrastructure that was maybe overloaded or, you know, not, I hesitate to say overloaded, but pushed to capacity. You know, there's some areas that we have had to push beyond capacity for a brief time. Then we also have to integrate in with TxDOT because we have two major corridors in our community. Well,
Yes.
not 287, you know, FM 1387, FM 663, and now beginning FM 875 that we can hold our hat in our hand and say, please, sir, can I have some more? But it's up to TxDOT to say yes, even if we have the money allocated for it. There was money allocated in the last bond election to put another exit at 14th Street to try to alleviate the congestion at 663 and 287. I mean, I think we've all seen that back up before. Well,
Yeah.
TxDOT let us spend it because it's not in their plans. Well, the city's working with TxDOT now to try to get it into TxDOT's plans to add a second off ramp there or to allow those funds to be used to extend the length of the off ramp on the 663 exit. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can be done, but that requires our city engineer to have a good relationship with TxDOT engineer for the region, which they do have, and that they're working on deepening it. And I think from a council perspective, our goal has to be to come alongside and help with those interdepartmental conversations, especially on these corridors that are so important to the mobility of our community.
You know, and you were right because 1387 is about to cut right through a bunch of people's houses.
Mhm.
The south option, it's going to divide one owner's property, and these are Midlothian people,
You
and
bet.
it's cutting right through there. 664 is getting an expansion into
Mhm.
6 lanes, Ovilla Road, and that's at the very edge of us,
Mhm.
or of Midlothian. And you have, I mean, there's so much going on now. When getting into that, what you were saying about the roads, a lot of these roads that are essential
Mhm.
for the city, essential for our city and our moving, they do belong to TxDOT.
Yes, sir.
But because they belong to TxDOT, we're often at their mercy. Would you support taking over some of those roads so that we can, in our community, take care of our road?
You know, it's that I would support putting that on the ballot for a public referendum because you want to talk about taxes going up. Let us get the maintenance cost and the ultimate capital expenditure cost of those roadways purely on the city of Midlothian's back. And I mean, that's going to be some local investment of dollars. But again, if our residents and our citizens of Midlothian demand those corridors be upgraded before TxDOT is willing to do it, that's one of the key options we have is do we bring these things in, take them over from the city, TxDOT throws their hands up, and then the cost is borne by us, but that's going to increase your taxes. Which, you know, if that's the will of the residents of Midlothian and the value add for them is like, yeah, let's do that. Let's pay 10 cents more on our taxes and take over these major roadways. And I'm throwing out imaginary numbers because I don't know that anybody's
Yeah.
doing the full math on it. But if an informed voting populace of the city of Midlothian says that's the direction they want to go, then I think council has to get in line and follow the will of the people on that and figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just one of those things to throw around because it is like 663 is a major I mean, it's a major street, and it used to be off somewhere, but now like the main majority of all these new beautiful houses are right off of that road, and a lot of Midlothianites on that road. So you're right. It does. I've talked with the city manager of Waxahachie about what it costs on the roads alone and how far behind they are on the roads, and it is daunting. It is just, the number is ginormous. It's
Yeah,
just so. But
absolutely. Well, that the city tried to do something to help alleviate that, and that was the 14th Street corridor, right? The challenge is that it still doesn't connect all the way to 875, and the way that the Dove Creek community was planned and laid out, it doesn't lend itself well to being the same type of thoroughfare corridor as the FM 663 corridor does currently. And so I think that's where the city is looking at solutions to say, well, if TxDOT's already maintaining this road, where can we put in relief facilities? How can we get an exit to 14th to shuttle some of that traffic off that doesn't need to necessarily go down 663? But again, now we're back to TxDOT. They have to give us that exit so that we can get the maximum benefit out of that 14th Street corridor to help pull some of the traffic off 663.
well, I'm going to get into the final topic. I could keep you on forever, but try to keep these at 30 minutes. But
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you kind of the final question and then give you the mic. Just shut up. The final question on this is public safety.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot going on. There was a murder not too long ago in Midlothian. They found a dead body shot up or something like that. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make it sound insensitive, but it was a murder in
Yes, sir.
Midlothian. And it isn't the small town it used to be. There, you have that kind of stuff and drugs. And so what are your thoughts on law enforcement properly funding them and holding them accountable?
Well, first, I want to clear up a misconception. Growing up here, there was murders growing up here. There wasn't a lot of them, but they did occur, right? And I tell you firsthand, I saw it when I was in high school and I graduated in 1998. There was drugs in Midlothian, right?
What?
Depending on, yeah, I'm telling you what.
They were doing it. They had Midlothian cripping going on here, or what?
Yeah, hey, look, it was a different time without cell phone cameras and instant accountability in our world. But it's fun to paint the past, with rose-colored glasses and say, oh, what used to be. We've lost it, and I think it's important that we look at the heart of Midlothian was never that we were 100% crime free, 100% drug free, 100% alcohol free, whatever you want to call it, because those things never really existed except in our fuzzy imaginations from the past. But what we did have and what we need to keep is a community where we know our neighbors, where we support our neighbors, where we work together for our common purpose, and having a quality place, a safe place for our kids to go to school, to play, to go to the park, to ride their bike down the street. And I absolutely believe that we should have the absolute best trained, best funded, and best equipped first responders on both the police and the fire EMS side of the equation in the area, because those folks work day and night 24/7 to ensure that our community is a safe community and is a healthy community. I mean, you look at our response times on a police call. I mean, it's averaging under 6 minutes. Our response time on fire EMS averages under 6 minutes. If you're having a heart attack, the difference between 6 minutes and 8 minutes is a recovery and a funeral. That's huge. We can't lose that, right? That's stuff that brings folks to our community because they want a quality place to live. They're willing to pay 7% for 700, like you said earlier, which is crazy to me as well. But when you have a quality place to live, quality folks, quality jobs, quality businesses will find your community. And the best marketing that we can do for our community is ensuring that we stay a place to call home, not just a place to live. And that means investing in those things that give us that quality of life and peace of mind here in Midlothian as a resident.
Definitely. Well, as you guys have seen, I have been scrolling the website for Mr. Ross Weaver. He does have a website, and the address has been going. You want to find out more about him, you can go to his website right here, which I'm scrolling through, and you guys can look through it. You can contact him. Obviously, he's got his contact down here, so you can email him and get a hold of him if you got questions. But this is his website, so if you want more information on him, make sure you go ahead and check that out. Um, I appreciate you coming on, sir. I'm going to give you the mic and just shut up and let you talk.
Hey, no, I appreciate the opportunity. Again, I appreciate what you're doing to make sure that our residents are informed. They have the best opportunity to get to know the folks that are running for these positions. It's important to me. It's a passion for me. I've wanted to run for Midlothian for a long time. I hit a season in life here where I have an opportunity with a senior and a sixth grader and a window there to jump in and throw my hat in the ring. And so I felt it was time. This is home for me. It's been home for my family for several generations, and I want it to be home for several generations more. And that means we've got to focus on what's core, what's important, those basic services that a city is supposed to provide, keep our city government out of lanes that it's not supposed to be in, and ensure that we're being good stewards of the public trust and the public funds, the taxpayer dollars. But most importantly, we have to set clear expectations through input from our community for our city staff on the direction of this community, and then come behind it with respectful and firm accountability to ensure that any course corrections that need to be made and are made timely. Any mistakes that occur are corrected efficiently and timely. And ultimately, we just have to, as a city council, ensure that we are leading into the future and not just trying to do what we feel is right now. It's what's best for the future of Midlothian, the sustainability of Midlothian. And that's why I'm running to be your city councilman in place 5. Again, my name is Ross Weaver, and I would love to have your support, and I would love to have a conversation. If you want to reach out, shoot an email. I'll get in touch. We can grab a coffee or a phone call, because I'm not afraid to talk to anybody in our community about our community at any time they want to have that conversation.
Well, you know what? I appreciate you coming on the show, and this is like the first step for transparency. When you get on the show and you get asked these questions, I don't give you the questions. I just sit there and shoot them at you, and you answer them, and so the people can decide what they think of you. Not me,
Sure.
not nobody else. Just a format for you to talk directly to the people, and I'm very glad that you came on. Very very thankful. I am going to be interviewing the incumbent, Mr. Ed Garner. He's going to be coming on, and I'll have that interview too. Again, Mr. Weaver, thank you so much. Can you stick around real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.